Seriously, another government shutdown. The monumentally stupid stuff. Yeah, it is quite the interesting little thing that we got going on here. Welcome to the channel. I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, American expat here in Korea. Yeah, we're in Korea. We sold everything and house, car, guns, ammo, everything in the kitchen junk drawer. And then we threw stuff in a couple of suitcases and we came here to Korea. So, yeah, that's what we got going on. Retired in Korea, expenses are less. George is back. And of course, there's George saying howdy, good morning, or good evening in case of George's location. But yeah, we've got another government shutdown. And it's just kind of amazing. My background is I joined the Army when I was 17 years old. I was in delayed entry program and I actually turned 18 in basic training many years ago. Just turned 59, so yeah, I'm a little old. So with that, the fun thing was that during my time in the military, I think I experienced 3 government shutdowns during my time in the military, and always kind of problematic. I never really understood. The first one I didn't really care about because it was like, oh, are we still going to get paid? And the answer was, well, you'll get paid when you get paid. Show up to work at 06, we're doing PT, and then we're going to go to the motor pool and do a bunch of work. So, yeah, didn't really, eventually your pay would get sorted out. And a little problematic. The second one, I started thinking about it, and I was like, wait a second, they're shutting down the government because of the budget, and they can't agree on a budget. And I'm like, okay, a budget. Let's consider the budget that we had for our household. That's kind of a little microcosm of the big picture of the government. You have the house, the White House, and then you have a budget for the house. And, so I just kind of said, well, let's look at our budget. Would we shut down our budget and not pay our bills and the things that we need to pay, the necessities, if there was extraneous payments going to other things that weren't necessary? So let's consider it this way. You got the husband and you got the wife. And let's say the husband goes and he's not fiscally responsible. And so what he ends up doing is spending a bunch of stuff. He buys the bass boat, he gets this and that, and stuff that isn't really important. Probably doesn't have the money, goes into debt to do it. But instead, he buys that stuff instead of paying the mortgage, paying the rent, paying the utilities, and, stuff like that. It's just kind of the stuff we got going on. Terry, hey, Terry, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at. We're talking about the massively stupid government shutdown, and I was talking about a budget for like our budget. So let's say in how we're going to move this into the government, and you'll see how massively stupid this government shutdown is, and I've been through a few of them. So let's say you have the husband, and he's not fiscally responsible. He spends money that he doesn't have on a bunch of stuff that isn't a necessity, like rent, food, utilities, things like that. Let's see, the car, paying the car off, or the mortgage, the insurance, and things like that. Your health insurance, all that. Doesn't want to do that. He wants to buy all the toys and everything else and spend a bunch of money and not, and then he gets found out. The wife finds out, and you could switch the roles or whatever, but the wife finds out, and so there's a meeting, and you talk about the budget, and it's like, instead of addressing the fiscally irresponsible spending of one side of the house, you decide we're going to shut down and we're just not going to pay anybody. That is the most monumentally stupid thing that I've ever heard. No responsible adult would do that. Just wouldn't happen. What would end up happening is that the husband and wife come together, both sides come together and say, hey, these are things that we have to pay, the base items that we need to pay, the rent, the mortgage, insurance, gas, food, the things that we need to survive and keep us safe. We need to pay those things, and then all these other things that we bought, and maybe the wife, went out and bought a bunch of purses and $4,000 or $5,000 a bag or whatever, Chanel or Dolce Gabbana or whatever stuff that they buy, and she puts it on debt, but it's not for the necessities. Let's say the wife just spends money like it's going out of style, and then the husband finds out, and it's like, instead of saying, hey, we're going to keep paying on the necessities, we're just not going to pay anybody until we can come to an agreement. Well, if the wife isn't fiscally responsible and the husband is, they're probably not going to come to an agreement until, just think about it. You don't pay your mortgage, you don't pay your rent, you don't pay your loans, your FICO score goes down, it's a bad ding on your credit, so on and so forth. Landlord gets mad, or maybe the bank gets mad and sends you, notices of possible foreclosure, or you have additional fees or whatever. Some loans that you have, if you don't pay on time, there's, crazy things that they can end up doing. And so you end up in a worse position than if you paid those necessities. So I think the problem that we're seeing, that way back in the time of my military time, with the second government shutdown that we experienced, and they said, oh, they can't come to a consensus and make a budget. And it's like, you would never see this in somebody's real life. Husband, wife, family, whatever, kids are spending a bunch of money. You would never just throw up your hands and say, well, we're just not going to, until we can come to an agreement, and both sides are pointing their fingers at each other and say, well, we're just not going to pay anybody anything. That is monumentally stupid. And I'm not sure why this is a thing in our government. The more I think about it, it really just pisses me off. There should be things that are necessities, that are labeled as necessities, kind of like the mortgage, health insurance, all this, food, utilities, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with our government. You should not be able to shut the government down because you can't agree on a budget because somebody, some side, or even both sides or whatever, are not being fiscally responsible, and they're just sending money to countries overseas for, studying cow farts and, in Peru or something like that. Some of the weird crazy, oh, we need to do this program. And it's like in Sri Lanka and whatever. And it's like, what? They have their own government. We don't need U.S. taxpayer money going to these countries to, study cow farts and whatever it is in these other countries, and crazy things. Probably, I'm just saying, if you bring that down to our level, you probably just wouldn't throw money away like that because you're fiscally responsible and you're mature and you're an adult and you're not stupid. So I think there's a lot of things that I think, and there's a lot of things that I don't think too. So I'm not saying I'm all that in a bag of chips. Let's see what George says. George says, the problem is they're not spending their money. They're spending our money, so they don't care. Exactly. When it's always somebody else's money, you're just free willy. You just do whatever you want. It's not your money. Terry says, the government spends money like a drunken sailor. Yeah, at times, yes. But there should be some basic things, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm not super smart. I'm barely smart, I guess. But you should have things like the military, that the military should be paid. Anybody that gets a paycheck should not be bent over a barrel and rode hard and put away wet because of fiscal irresponsibility of one side or another that is sending U.S. taxpayer dollars to other countries, kind of like the husband that buys the bass boat and stuff that they can't afford. And instead of addressing that drunken sailor spending and, get some accountability on that, we're just going to throw up our hands like spoiled toddlers and we're going to say, no, we're going to shut down the entire government. That makes no sense whatsoever. In case you don't know, I'm an independent. I believe in good ideas from both sides and in the middle and left, right, and the whole spectrum, as long as it's good for the citizens of the United States and the people as a whole. But when you start, like I said, it ends up, Terry says, the drunken sailor spending money. There is no accountability. There's no, you're round of drinks for everybody, and you're just spending money like it's going out of style. But it's exactly right. It's like what George said. It's not their money. And so it's always easy to be loosey-goosey with somebody else's money until it's your own, which brings me to the next point. If we can't have a budget, politicians shouldn't get paid. Isn't it amazing how the U.S. military, and my daughter is a doctor in the U.S. military, and the threat of this and all of this is causing a lot of concern, not really for her because she's responsible and she's saved up money for emergencies, for like 6 months worth of emergencies, as probably every good person should do. We taught her to do that. But the lower enlisted and their family members, they're not financially adept as she is, and it's really bothering a lot of people. So, and I've heard it. We've gone to the gym, I hear people talking about it, especially younger soldiers and their families. It's hard to make ends meet to begin with. Now they're under this threat and stress of, how are we going to pay our car note? How are we going to pay our rent? How are we going to pay this or that? This should not be a thing that can be used in political fighting the paychecks of the citizens of the United States, and especially the military. It's kind of like, the military and those that support the military, those paychecks should not stop. And unfortunately, certain sides of our government are like, oh, no, we're just going to shut everything down. And why this is still a thing, I totally don't get it. And if you can't balance the budget, you should be fired. Because it's not like this is something out of the blue that just happens unbeknownst to anyone. It's like an alien landing on Earth. How did this happen? We have to shut down the government because of this odd thing that is going on that we've never experienced before, but yet it happens every single year and everybody knows about it. So I really think it comes down to, regardless of left or right or in the middle or whatever, we should address the crazy spending like a drunken sailor, and we should just have items that are basic, that those are going to be paid and the government's not going to be shut down. Maybe there can be a pause. Maybe there should be a stop to spending and sending money to other countries. Let's stop that and reassess that, because a lot of that is BS. Let's talk about NGOs and how money from the United States government goes to other countries, and those other countries funnel that money into the pocket of politicians and their NGOs, non-government organizations, and they get paid, and all of a sudden, book deal for so-and-so politician, and they got $10 million for a book that ends up in the dollar store shelf in a matter of weeks. And the money trail is clear. The money trail is absolutely clear. Like George says, they have no financial skin in the game. And so when they continue to get paid, they can say, each side can say, well, look how bad you're making it for the people and the citizens by not, settling and making a budget, agreeing on a budget. And it's like, that shouldn't even be a thing to begin with. You should pay the people because they work for you. They have a job, they have a contract, they work, and they should get paid. I don't think there's any job in the United States where if you don't get paid, you're expected to work. Except when it comes to our government, the military and stuff like that. It's like, that is totally insane. So why is that a thing? You should pay the government employees, you should pay the military, and so on and so forth. But what needs to be addressed is, hey, let's stop sending this massive amount of stupid money to these other countries that we shouldn't be sending it to. That's my opinion. Let's see. Terry says they tried to pass paying essential personnel in the military and it was voted down today, and then the Senate recessed for 3 days. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And the fact that the politicians are still getting paid, you're hiring somebody. Could you imagine if you press the like button while I take a swig? Could you imagine you have a business, you're a small business person or a big business person, and it ends up that you hire somebody to do a job. And here's the job qualifications. Here's your duties and responsibilities for this job that you're going to hire this person for. And they say, yes, we'll do it. And then they don't. And you're like, hey, you're not doing these things, and I've warned you a few times about this, and you're taking the business credit card and you're spending it on stuff that isn't necessary for the business, and you keep doing that. So any business person in their right mind would say you're fired, but not so in the U.S. government. No. We're going to continue paying them. Matter of fact, we can even give raises to those people for not doing their job. And the budget comes up every single year, like clockwork. It's not like this blood moon that comes only once every 100 years. No, it happens every single year. So the fact that politicians are still getting paid, that pisses me off to no end. Whether it's right or left. It's just politicians as a whole. If you can't do your job and balance the budget and have the essentials budget, you shouldn't be in politics. You shouldn't be getting paid while other people are not getting paid because you can't fulfill the duties and responsibilities of the job that you're hired to do. I don't know. It's just a thing. Hey, Van Nomadic pops in, says, hey, good seeing you. There, in my opinion, there should be things like, the military and people that work in the government, they should get paid. They should, the same thing kind of goes with Social Security. Why are we using Social Security? And we only talk about Social Security when it's re-election time, and each side says, oh, we care about Social Security and our seniors, but they don't have good cost of living increase. They don't come up with ways to fund Social Security, even though they borrowed a shitload of money out of Social Security, never paid it back, and that's why it's going to be insolvent in 2034, which is like 9 years away or whatever. It doesn't make sense, and it's like, well, how are we going to fund it? Politicians are like, I don't know how we can fund Social Security. We just don't have any ideas on how to fund it. Seriously, it is so simple. Every product that comes into the United States should have a Social Security tariff. And so that way, no U.S. citizen, nobody in the United States pays for Social Security. Social Security shouldn't be taxed to begin with. When it first came out, for such a long time, Social Security wasn't even taxed because you worked and your Social Security went into the Social Security that paid for the people that were currently on Social Security. It wasn't your Social Security account per se. That is, you're putting money in an account, it's growing, and then you'll get money at the end when you retire. No, you're paying for the people that were on Social Security at the time that you were working. When you get Social Security, the people that are working are going to be paying for your Social Security. And they always hold it over the people. They always hold it over one side or another. It doesn't really matter. But they're like, our seniors, and they only care during election time. And we can't figure out a way to make Social Security solvent. Oh, whoa, and then of course they finger point and blame each other. One side, focuses on the other, and it's almost like it's a contrived piece of fiction. It's like a play. It's like a script, and it's like people are like, And the majority of people are like, oh, yeah, oh, how in the world are we going to fund Social Security if we don't tax Social Security and tax our citizens? Dude, just do a tariff on it. I've been saying this for 20 some odd years. Just have a tariff charge. And so that way it's not dependent upon the population. And if we have a shrinking population because people aren't knocking boots and pumping out kids, you don't have to worry about that because it's based on the consumerism of all of the citizens in the United States buys a bunch of shit without fail. So Social Security would never be insolvent. And you could actually give pay increases that would actually give a damn, make a big difference in people's lives and seniors who now are basically forced out of retirement. They can't even survive off of Social Security because of increased housing and expenses and so on and so forth. Oh, and by the way, the last administration, the guy that was in charge of the last administration, he voted that Social Security should be taxed. So that's why I'm not a big fan of him to begin with. You know, he's like, oh, we're so worried about Social Security and our seniors, and yet he's the one that voted to tax it. Oh, get me started. Let's get back to this. George says, the absurdity that Congress and Senate, being employees of the nation, are able to give themselves raises has always dumbfounded me. Yeah. Absolutely. And not just like, 1.2% or I think I recently saw a thing where it says the cost of living is going to, 2.6% or 2.8% or whatever. So we're going to get an increase, retired military, that'll come out to like $60, $65 for me or something like that. So, but politicians, they can all come together. Should we vote to give ourselves a raise? Hell yes, I. Ayes have it. How much should we do? Oh, I don't know, about $7,000, $10,000. Let's increase it by $7,000. I. And it's like, whoa. That's insane. There is no oversight. I understand, and the amount that they get paid, like what, 175, 173,000 a year or whatever. And I know housing's a pain in the butt where these politicians live, for the federal government and so on and so forth. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's the fox that's running the hen house is what it comes down to. And it's, that they can give, like George says, you give themselves a raise, but their raises are up here, and then people on Social Security, their raises are way down here, and veterans are way down here, and, disability is way down here, but they get, and could you imagine, let's go back to, seriously? Let's go back to, you have a small business, or I have a small business. Put yourself in the shoes. You have a small business that, it pays the expenses of the business. It pays money. It gives you enough money to, have a place to live, food, utilities, rent, health insurance, all that stuff. And you're breaking even. Maybe you make a little bit of money and you put some in for retirement, Roth IRA or whatever. Congratulations. That's awesome. But imagine, again, that the employees that you hired, let's say you have 4 or 5 employees, and the employees all come together and say, well, we're going to give ourselves a raise. Budget be damned. We're going to go into debt to do this. And it's like, whoa. I'm the owner of the company. And I only got like a, 1.5% raise. How are you getting, double-digit pay raises when the books in the budget, we can't even do that? Oh, we'll just borrow the money. And so what we have done in the United States, in my opinion, is that we have turned over the ownership of our country to the employees that are corrupt individuals. And they're like, oh, we're going to give ourselves raises. Oh, look at all the work I do. And then we're not even getting into the insider trading. We're not talking about the kickbacks that they get from lobbyists and so on and so forth, or the deals that they get, the book deals or the art, oh, my son's an artist, and suddenly millions and millions of people are buying his art with millions and millions of dollars, and it's like where before he was just a coke addict, whoring drug fiend, felon. It's amazing on how that happened, with the last administration. It's just like, people are getting paid left and right. I think that if you are in government, first we should have term limits. You do two terms and you're done. If you can't have the balanced budget, you get fired and you don't get paid. And no politician should get retirement because, if you're a politician, you can do 4 years and you can get a retirement after 4 years. That is insane. And with the amount of money that all of these politicians are making on the side, most likely illegally, but it is legal because it's going through NGOs and all this stuff. And it's just like, stuff that you and I can't do, but they can do it. They don't need a pension. They've got their own health care that is different from you and I's health care. And it's way better. Of the people, for the people, by the people. I don't know. It should be the same, It's crazy. Let's see. Terry says here in Texas, they have to balance the budget per state constitution. The state legislature meets every 2 years for 6 months and comes up with a 2-year budget. They only get paid in session. Exactly. There should be no pension for politicians these days. That never should have been a thing on that. Terry says our raise on Social Security raise for 2026 is 2.8%. So that's good. Yeah, that's what it was. It was 2.8%. And the military retirement is based off of kind of the same way that Social Security is as well. So I'll be getting a pay raise. And like I said, it'll be like maybe $65, an extra $65. Whoop-de-doo. I'll take whatever I can get. But when you compare that to the raises that politicians give themselves, that is criminal. You would not let your employees say, hey, we're going to give ourselves, an extra $2,000 or $3,000 a year while you only get 2.6% raise as the owner, and we, the people, are the owners of our government. Somebody turned over the keys of the government away from the owner and gave it to the corrupt politicians. It just, term limits, no pension, no insider trading. There should be a clause that if you're a politician, that you cannot take any foreign money from any country for 25 years. It'd be like, whoa, wait a second now. Of course, now all the employees in the business, you told them that they wouldn't like that, But we continue to let that happen. We continue to let our spending get so out of control and so convoluted, and then they paint it into this box and this worldview that we think, oh, there's no way to fund Social Security. It's going to be insolvent. Yes, there is. Tariffs. Just do a tax on everything that comes into the United States. No more tax on Social Security. That'll be a huge thing for seniors. If you really cared about your seniors who are on Social Security, of course, all the politicians say this, but they never really do anything to help them out. It's only during re-election that they use the seniors. Oh, the seniors in the military, we need to take care of them. But, government shutdown, screw them. We'll bend them over and throw some sand and we'll just hump away. Nobody cares about that. It's like, hey, you're not saying the same thing. You're using people as blackmail to kind of push your agenda, regardless of what the agenda is, and that should not be a thing. Let's see what else. George says, in a ban on lobbyists, you are there to represent the people, not a company. Yeah, the whole lobbyist thing, that's corrupt as the day is long. And again, if you start looking at lobbyists and you look at NGOs and how these politicians, it's amazing that somebody makes $170,000 a year, goes from making just $170,000, has a net value, a net worth of maybe $100,000 or whatever, and then after the first or second year of being in politics, suddenly they have $1 million. Don't tell me something's not screwy. That should be as illegal as the day is long. If they can do something that we, the people, cannot do and participate in, it shouldn't be a thing. Because then it is no longer of the people, for the people, by the people. We have two different classes. We have the politicians and the rules that they play by and can abuse and use taxpayer money to fund their little deals and get money through NGOs. And we, the hardworking people, the good people like you and me, we just have to suck it up and, the government's closing down, and they feed us this line of bull saying, it's impossible, there's no way that we can fund Social Security, it's going to drop by 30%. And it's like, hello? I don't know. It just... Terry says, my Medicare premiums are around $420 a month on top of taxes. I know. It's insane. It is truly insane. And, $420 a month on top of taxes. And you consider that the average, the majority of people in the United States that are low income don't pay taxes anyway. If you look at who actually pays taxes, the people that don't make a lot of money don't pay taxes, basically what it comes out to. And it's just kind of eye-opening on that. But when you have these Medicare, Medicaid, when you have the Obamacare, oh my gosh, hello. Now you got me started. Again, I'm an independent. But if you look at what was promised and what we have now for Obamacare and how the rates have gone up and the deductibles have gone up, that was a shitty deal for everybody. And it was in the fine print. But nobody wanted to read the fine print because it's like, we were going to do national health care. This is the only way that we can do it. Well, who got paid? Somebody got paid, and we're getting screwed. And now you have people that can't afford health care who have Obamacare. Why? All you had to do is read. Simple reading and comprehension to look at the deals and say, okay, well, hey, it's kind of like your home budget. We got our budget, we're paying the essentials, we have a little bit of debt, but we're trying to pay that off, and we'll always have a balanced budget. And that if some crazy spending comes into play, we stop and we're just going to stick to the basics. And there's you got to have more money coming in. So there's only a few ways in which we can do that. Get a second job, do a side gig, whatever it is, have a two income family, working in so on and so forth. There's a number of things that you can end up doing, but our government doesn't do that because the money is printed out of thin air. It's a fiat money system, and it's just insane on how, it begs the question, why are we even being taxed when we have a fiat money system? Other countries have said this as well. They don't understand how, it doesn't make sense. I think the tariff thing is, I've been saying this for a long, long time. You want to fund Social Security forever? Put a tariff on tax of goods and services coming into the United States. And it doesn't have to be a huge tax. That's the beauty of the thing. We are such a consumer nation. We would have other countries funding our Social Security, don't tax the Social Security, get rid of property tax. Again, we're trying to save all the world's problems, so I appreciate all the help. Property tax shouldn't be a thing, and especially if you pay off your home, you shouldn't have to pay property tax, because that's like if I buy this cup here and I pay tax on it, and once I paid this off, it is mine. I shouldn't have to pay a tax every single year to continue owning this. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, it's just got some absolutely crazy things that we got going on, and I don't think people understand. I think people have been so ingrained into what the politicians are telling us. Oh oh, this is going to shut down. And then they have so many things that are not necessary that they're spending money on and going into debt that we forgot. It's just a simple household budget. Yeah. George says the Schoolhouse Rock cartoon on a bill was BS. Maybe at one time it wasn't. But then they found ways in which they could legally but unethically get around all of that and pay themselves in the process and hold the American people hostage for, whatever political agenda they have from whichever side. And that should not be a thing. That's the thing that gets me. Like I said, good idea. I want free healthcare. Free healthcare. Boom. Free healthcare. I think the United States is like the largest consumer on the planet, if I'm not mistaken. And we're definitely in the top 5. But with that being said, you just put a tariff and that funds for healthcare. And again, when you have insurance and you have healthcare, and then the cost of goods and services in the medical world are here, and then you have insurance, and your insurance says, well, we're gonna go up to here that will pay this, and then all of a sudden the prices meet that, and then cost of living goes up, so this goes up and this goes up, and next thing you know, everything in medical is insanely expensive, and it's all based off the insurance. Of course, your insurance, they're going to charge you more money for the insurance, and they're going to charge you more money for, drugs, pharmacies, medication, so on and so forth. It's amazing on how much money we spend on medication in the United States versus other countries overseas, and the exact same medications are dirt cheap. We experience this because we live in Korea. Yeah, it is totally true. So, but we've allowed this system to be perpetuated, and it's all come from our government because our government isn't doing the jobs. The public servants who have duties and responsibilities, their job description, they're not doing that. And we let the fox run the hen house, and that's what it comes down to. George says, Florida's trying to get rid of private property tax. That is awesome. I applaud that. Terry says, the way the law is written, if Congress doesn't vote on their raise after so many days, it automatically goes into effect. That way they can campaign on, I didn't vote for a pay raise. If you had a small business, I had small business, you would never, ever in a million years do that in a small business, ever. No person in their right mind, unless you had dementia or your moral compass is broke beyond repair, would ever agree to anything like that. There's no way. There's no way. Hey, let's make this thing so that if we don't vote on it, we still get a pay raise. And then that way we can say, yeah, that we didn't vote for the pay raise. But you're still getting a pay raise. Maybe you didn't get the big pay raise that you wanted, but you still get a pay raise that is way more than what the American people get on Social Security and blah, 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 and all that. So, yeah, that sounds like a good deal. Yeah, the fox is running the hen house. That is what we got going on. Things that you would never do in your own personal budget, our government is doing that in spades and kicking the can down the road. The amount of money, if you just took what you pay into Social Security and just put it into the stock market, no fancy stuff, you would come out with, I've seen a number of people that have run the numbers and just, put it in, instead of paying, Social Security, you just put it into the market, and over your lifetime, 30, 40 years, I think it was 40 years or whatever, you'll be a multimillionaire. You'd have, I've seen people do the math, and depending on the return rates or whatever, instead of, $5 million, $7, $8, $9 million. Again, you could probably, it depends on how much you work and how much you put in, but, you'd have multi-millions of dollars into your retirement. But our government, no, we have Social Security, where we're going to pay the people that are on Social Security now, the working people are paying for those people. It's a Ponzi scheme. It is a legal Ponzi scheme. The very first Social Security recipient was Ida Mae Fuller, I think her name was, and she paid into Social Security for I can't remember how many months, and then she got, paid for Social Security for the rest of her life, and it just far outweighed. So automatically, the first person put in less money and got more over time, and then the government said, "Hey, well, that's how we're going to take care of our seniors." There needs to be a change in the law because we're not back in those old days. Something needs to be revamped. And, especially when it comes to Social Security, when it comes to veterans, retirees, and so on and so forth. And, there's this inequality. It's funny how the politicians always talk about equality, fighting for justice and the equality of all people under my administration, blah, 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 blah. And yet, they are some of the most out of touch, elitist people on the planet, and they use your money, the taxpayer money. It just amazes me. Yeah. Again, that way they can campaign that I didn't vote for the pay raise, but they still get a pay raise after so many days. And again, it goes back to the budget. Why is the government shut down? Because of we can't agree on a budget. And again, if you had a husband and a wife, and the wife is spending money like it's going out of style, and the husband is fiscally responsible, or vice versa, whatever it is, one spouse says this, the other spouse says this, and all of a sudden they just throw up their hands and they say, well, we're not going to pay our mortgage, we're not going to buy food, we're not going to pay the utilities or health insurance or anything because we can't agree on a budget. You know what happens to people like that? They go into foreclosure. They go into bankruptcy. And yet our government is so corrupt that we get to a place of where, we'll just make concessions for it. And then because foreign countries had lobbyists and stuff, and supported me and got me elected. And so now I have to reciprocate and have foreign taxpayer money go to that foreign country that can be funneled through, and then I get a little kickback off of that. That's the system that we have, unfortunately. And George says, tell me again how taxation isn't theft. Yeah. It depends. If you tax, I understand what you're saying, but if you put a tax on all goods and services, a tariff is essentially a tax or a fee on all goods and services that come into the United States, that's not theft, it's taxation. I believe in taxation in that aspect. But when you're talking about taxation of, there's this inequality of, politicians have their own little tax thing and they can get away with getting money and not paying taxes on it through their NGOs and so on and charities and so on and so forth that normal people can't do, then that just pisses me off. Let's see. Terry says, our property taxes go up, but the tax rate doesn't go up because the county raises valuation on your home, which raises our taxes. Our county commissioner campaigned on not raising the property tax rate. Yeah. Which, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't property tax a thing that popped up during World War I to help fund the war? The World War, the First World War, which everybody thought was Armageddon, the whole 9 yards. And it was used to raise money, and so that's why there was like property tax or whatever. It's either that or the income tax. I can't remember which one of those. But still, it's like there was times in the United States where we didn't have that, and we operated successfully. People just don't think out of the box, and we got a bunch of corrupt politicians that are manipulated the system to benefit them and not the people that they represent. So again, I'm an independent. I like ideas from the left and the right. Like I said, I love free healthcare. It's just a matter of who pays for it. And it should be a good deal. Just like with your own home budget. I don't care if you're left, right, or in the middle. If you're going to go buy something, you want to get a good deal. You want to get the discount. You want to get a perceived value. But unfortunately, a lot of our politicians have not done that. And we have this fiscal irresponsibility, and we're not getting what we hired them for. And, again, the fox running the hen house is what we have now. So, that pisses me off. It pisses me off. And here's the thing. I read an article on how people are, billionaires, are donating money so that the military can get paid. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're going to need about like $6 or $7 trillion to pay the paychecks of everybody in the U.S. military. So, I mean, it's not enough at all. But the fact that there are billionaires out there and rich people, the elite rich, the top 1%ers that are donating money so to overcome this, it says a lot about those people. I don't care what their politics are. Somebody cares about the people that are not getting paid, that are working, and that's slavery. I think our country is, there's no other job in the United States where you're expected to work and not get paid. It's just insane. Let's see. George says, property tax for education. Boy, did that work out. Yeah, that's true. Property tax, and it keeps going up. It keeps going up. And we've got the lowest education. We're sliding down the scale of math, science, reading comprehension in the world, and we're just crashing and burning. It's like a rolling dumpster fire on steroids. And but we're pumping a ton of money into it. Don't even get me started on education. We should have never had a Department of Education to begin with. It should always been a state thing. And it comes down to fiscal responsibility. There's way too much money going into administration. I remember going to school, and you never had school, a list of here's the things, school supply list. Tissues, paper towels, markers, erasers, all of this stuff. And it's like, hell, I remember going to school. We never had to do that because there was enough money going to the teachers, but now all the money is going towards administration. So now you have to have a list of school supplies that you need to bring to the school. Tissues, really? No, your kid, if your kid needed to blow their nose, they blew their nose with their own tissues. Why should I have to supply tissues for teachers and other students? It makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. Terry says, what's funny is we paid our house off and our credit rating went down 25 points. I know. But it's a whole debt system. So it's based off of how much debt you have. And if you have zero debt, it's a ding, because for some reason, you paying off your house, which is the largest thing that you will probably ever own, and that most people in their lives will never ever do, that kind of tells me that you're financially responsible, and you're a very good credit risk because you went through and you went the extra mile. You worked second jobs and you just pounded out that principal and paid that thing off. Your credit rating should go up. People would say, holy crow, the biggest expense that somebody has ever had in their entire lives, and the majority of people don't ever do that, let's drop their credit rating 25 points, or 100 points or whatever it is. That's insane. It should be the opposite. It should be, hey, look what he paid off. Let's get him a loan because we have a real good indicator that he will pay off his loans. He paid off his house, for Christ's sake. Yeah. And I know we went through that as well. We paid off our house, and we did the stuff that most people don't want to do. We work side jobs, we work second jobs. We just hammered home. We cut the extraneous spending on BS and stuff, that a lot of people were like, oh, well, I got a new gun and I got a new bass boat. I got this and that. And it's all on credit. But yet, towards the end of their life, their house isn't paid for. I didn't have a lot of that stuff. I would have liked to have had that stuff, but you need to make a decision. Do I want to pay off the house and have a good retirement, or do I want to have a lot of stuff that's going to depreciate and not make me any money and still not have my house paid off? And so, yeah, the largest expense that I have as a retiree is going to be my housing. But no, I don't want to work towards that. I want the bass boat. I want the motorcycle. I want the Harleys. I want this and that, and so on and so forth. It's just crazy, 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 crazy. Yeah. Terry says, if you want to keep a good credit rating, you have to stay in debt. Yeah. We keep ours up. Our credit rating is pretty good. And the thing is we use our credit card pretty much on the majority of things that we buy. But at the end of every month, we pay it off. So we don't pay any interest on it. So that keeps our credit rating where it is. George says, my sister is a teacher and she has to stock her own classroom out of pocket while her school board just got a massive raise. She is pissed. Yep. Totally get it. There's way too much in administration. And it's like the promise, the whole, the funding for education and the Department of Education, you don't really need that. Leave that up to the states. But even if you left it up to the states, it is so corrupt that unfortunately we get to a place of where it's like, the administration gets the big chunk of that and it doesn't filter down. There is no trickle down economics, going back to the Reagan years. Nothing trickles down to the classroom and the students. And there's not even a plan of how do we improve test scores. No, we concentrate on all this other stuff, but we're losing pace with the rest of the world when it comes to math, science, reading comprehension, all of those things. There was a video. Oh, I gotta tell you about this video. So they had, and it was UK. They had a bunch of Korean students from Korea go to the UK, and they had the UK students there, and these are high schoolers, and they took this test, like some exam, and it ends up that the Korean students took the test, boom, knocked it out, and the UK kids that took the same test, I want to say it was kind of like a college entrance exam type of test type thing. And the Korean students are like, oh yeah, it was good. It was kind of what we expected, and we did this and this and this, and but the UK kids were like, holy crow, that's the hardest thing I ever did. I don't know if I passed, and blah blah blah. And it ends up the UK kids were talking about, well, yeah, math and this, that's the hardest thing. I couldn't finish that, and the Korean kids are like, yeah, we did that in middle school. Just saying, all you got to do, if you want to be one of the top countries in math, science, and reading, is copy the top 3 countries who have the top scores in math, reading, science, comprehension, and so on and so forth, and do what they do. And you know what? Every single one of those top 3 countries has a significantly less education budget than the United States, severely. And it's not about budget. It's about standards. It's about homework. It's about doing the things that they do. It's kind of like copying the student over here that's getting A's on everything. Oh, let's just copy and do what they do. It's that simple. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I feel sorry for your sister, George, because yeah, teachers are just, they don't get paid enough. They have to stock their own classrooms. And what's even worse is that every single year, you go to Walmart or any big store, when it's just before school starts, you'll have lists, and it's just, the lists get longer and longer and longer, and it's more expensive. And it's like, holy crap, we just going to have to start, I'm going to have to start buying light bulbs because that's on the school supply list, and what return are you getting for your money? You're not even getting quality education anymore. You got kids that can't even read and comprehend simple paragraphs. There was a time in the United States where you graduated high school and that was a sufficient education to get into college and start college level classes. But now you have entire years of college that aren't even college level classes that are developed to get you so that you can attain those college level classes. Remedial English, science, math, the whole 9 yards, all remedial classes. You can end up taking a year, sometimes even 2 years worth of not even college level classes, developmental classes to get you up to the college level. So that's how far our education standards have fallen. But we're teaching a bunch of other stuff. Don't even get me started on that. They want you in debt because if you have that free money, you can build wealth. I know, right? That's part of it. But even then, there's people that build wealth because they make good choices. And so while it was easier and the cost of living was lower during our days growing up, it was still hard. And it's harder now. But then you have the advent of the internet and AI and so on and so forth. And you have people that are making money, remote work, that was unheard of during any time during when we were alive and growing up, and young adults and working and so on and so forth. There's people that are making, $1,000 or $2,000 a month, and they don't even have to leave their homes. And we're not talking OnlyFans. We're talking about legit remote jobs. And yeah, you're going to have to be creative. Yeah, you're going to have to suck up and deal with the harsh reality that you're going to have to live a different way than everybody else that is going into debt, because you have a plan, and down the road you can work towards that plan and having a good retirement. But most people these days don't care. They don't even know what a budget is, because our schools doesn't teach budgeting anymore. Schools don't teach you how to do a profit and loss sheet. Schools no longer teach you how to start and run a business. I remember going through school and they did that stuff. But now we don't do that. Now we talk about gender equality and all this stuff, but kids can't even do a simple budget. They can't even figure out a simple budget in their head. They don't even know how much they spend on expenses, unnecessary. They don't even know what their discretionary expenses are. They don't even know how much they spend on Starbucks per month, and you see that, what's that show, the guy Caleb Hammer or whatever, he goes over people's finances and they're monumentally stupid, which I don't understand why they even go on the show, because they know they've watched the show, and everybody that goes on that show is monumentally stupid when it comes to finances. I don't know why they go on that. I would just go to see Caleb and say, hey, I'm an idiot, but don't film me. I need help. But these people don't even do that. And it's just, we're in a backward society. It is very, very strange. So, yeah, people can't write checks, can't do budgets, can't figure out car interest. Just as long as they get, a nice looking car, the brand new phone, get all the designer bags and clothes and whatever, sneakers and everything. But, there's loans for cars that are like 8-year loans. Holy crap. I'll sell you a car, brand new $12,000 car, but you're going to give me $50,000. That's essentially what they're doing, and they're trading off any hope of realistic retirement. Insane. Terry says, if you put $10,000 in an index 500 fund, you would have around $1.5 million after 20 years thanks to compounding interest. Yeah, I know, right? Why do we need Social Security? You just take that and put it into boom, and there you go. Just do that. Just set a day and say, this is, from here on out, everybody prior to this that's being born, you'd phase it in, that your money that you would pay for, Social Security is going into an index fund. And, at the end of 20, 30 years or whatever, yeah, you'd be a millionaire. You'd have way more money than you would ever have than if you relied on Social Security. And you could phase out Social Security. That's the funny thing. You don't need Social Security. It would take a long time to phase it out. But again, do the tariffs on the Social Security to keep it solvent, but institute this other, like you're saying, the index fund and stock market, boom, it's a done deal. Yeah. George says, show them a checkbook and they will look at it like it's a Dead Sea Scroll. Yeah, it is absolutely true. Terry says, we had economics class when I was in high school. I know, right? We had home ec, we had budgeting. You had to learn how to budget. You learned about car loans, house loans. You to figure out the interest and how much. Well, if you bought this at this interest rate, this is how much at the end that you would pay extra because you're buying on debt. Same thing with amortization of a house loan and so on and so forth. We learned all that. Not today. Nobody even knows how to say the word amortization, or interest or compounding interest. Nobody. All they want is that low payment. Um, it is absolutely insane. Yeah. So there's absolutely no reason for a government shutdown. Absolutely zero, because you don't do it in your own budget at home and say one spouse is spending wildly crazy on stupid stuff and the other one's fiscally responsible, and so you're both just going to throw up your hands and say, oh, we're just not going to pay our mortgage, we're not going to pay, we got a business, we're not going to pay our employees on the small business that we have, we're not going to pay our health insurance or our rent or our utilities, we're just it's insane. You get paid, politicians get paid to balance the budget, and it happens every single year. If you can't do that, you should be out. You should get fired. And again, we went through this. For the new people that are here, there should be no pension for politicians anymore. You shouldn't be able to get funds from foreign countries in any way, shape, or form. You should, for 25 years. You should only have 2 terms. There should be term limits and everything. And again, it's just insane. We let the wolf into the hen house. Terry says a 10% tariff should be able to provide everybody the seed money for an index fund. Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to do. That could aid in the transition of getting off of Social Security and getting the next generation set up for success and retirement by just taking that money that they make. Because let's be honest, if you said, because we're at a level of Idiocracy here, is now a documentary. If you haven't seen that, look it up, Idiocracy, and watch it. There's some harsh, it's rough, hard humor, but it perfectly portrays of where we are in the United States and the majority of people around the world, more so in the United States. If you said, okay, you don't have to pay Social Security, you get that money, they'll just spend it and blow it, So I think if you're working and have that money, instead of it going to Social Security, have it go into the index fund and have that paired up with, like what Terry was saying, a tariff, and have that injected into there. You never need Social Security again, and you don't have to tax Social Security to begin with. That was the whole thing that the last administration, the Biden dude, he actually voted on that and said, yeah, we need to tax Social Security, where before that it wasn't taxed. So tell me how he cares for seniors, But then there's people on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the spectrum, that did the exact same thing. So don't think that I'm just picking on people. I'm an independent. That's it. But yeah, there's so many different ways in which you can run it. But the thing is that our government is not being run like you would run your house and your small business with a budget. If you ran your budget the way the government runs theirs and abuses the tax money, regardless of what side you're on, you would go into foreclosure, you would go into bankruptcy, and you would be homeless. And you'd still have a massive tax debt over your head. But yet we're gonna continue to allow the politicians, after 4 years, they can get a pension for the rest of their lives. They get health care that we can't get as normal people. They get better health care than we do. Well, wait a second. You're representing us, and it's of the people, by the people, for the people. You're not part of the people. You're setting yourself as an elitist. So, a lot of changes need to be had. And, I think through our government and through the Constitution and our amendments and all that stuff, it is, some people have said it's a living document. I think it's better said as it's an editable document, as long as it's coded with common sense, and that you could make these changes and put them as amendments to say, hey, politicians, you only get to do 2 terms. Politicians, you don't get a retirement. Politicians, you cannot accept any foreign money for the next 25 years after you served, while you served, and after you served in the United States government. There it is. And you cannot vote for your own pay raises. It's going to be tied to, kind of similar to the Social Security. And if you can't do your duties and responsibilities that you were hired to do, there would be no government shutdown, because if you can't do, boom, you're out. If you can't finalize a budget, you're out. You're fired, and you can't get rehired back. That should be a thing as well. So yeah, absolutely insane, stupid, massively stupid stuff. Anyway. But now the big thing is it's all about equality. It's all about this and all these other things that squabble and fight, and people are missing the elephant that is in the room, you know. And it's like things that you would never do in your own home budget or even consider doing. We're letting our politicians do that, and they're abusing the U.S. tax dollars. You know, why are you spending millions of dollars to study cow farts? Seriously, really? That's what we're doing? We're going to spend millions of dollars while we have people on Social Security that can't make ends meet, or military or whatever, you know, but you're going to vote for your own pay raises or not vote and still get pay raises. It's just, you know, and they work minimal amount of time. There was an article a long time ago that it had the politicians and how many days that they actually showed up to work. It ought to be like an hourly thing. You know, if you come to work and you vote, you should get paid for the time that you actually work. But this whole thing of like, you know, there's politicians that would come in and work maybe 56 days out of the year, and they're getting paid 100, you know, what is it, back in the day is whatever the pay was, still over $100,000. You're working 50 days out of 365 days. You're gone 200-300 days out of the year. That's insane. Again, if you had your own business and you were an employee that would do that, they would not be your employee because it's not good business. So I don't know why we accept that as our system of government and allow that to happen. I guess a lot of people are just sheep, and, you know, that's it. George says, we also need to take a good chunk of the tariff money to pay off debt so our money will actually be worth something again. Yeah, we're so far. I get it. And we should work towards a balanced budget and paying off the debt. But the problem is when you have such a massive amount of debt, it's physically impossible to pay off that debt now. If you look up the thing, you know, Google it or Grok it or whatever it is, Chat GPT it. If you paid $1 per second to pay off $1 billion or $1 trillion or whatever it is, it'd take you 33,000 years. And we're something like, 33 trillion or 13 trillion or 30. There's no way that we could pay off our debt. It is physically impossible. No, maybe in an alternate multiverse, you know, Marvel universe, you know, there's a way to do that. But we're way past that, unfortunately. But, you know, that's why I think we need to curb the astronomically stupid spending that we're sending out of taxpayer money to other countries. And we also need to curb the pay that we give our politicians and the term limits, the whole thing that we talked about. But, you know, we need to get back to be fiscally responsible. Now, I'm all for helping people out. Like I said, I love free healthcare. We should have free healthcare. Just depends on who's paying, and it shouldn't be the American citizens. Terry says, I remember when I was in the Air Force, Congress said the military had the most lucrative retirement system in the world, but we only got 50% of our pay while they get 100% of their salary. I know, right? And here's the other thing. That brings up a good point, you know, about that is I remember saying you'll get 50% and you'll get free healthcare for the rest of your life. So why do I have to pay a copay? It was under the guise when I enlisted, it was like, oh, and you'll get a retirement check, you get free health care, blah, blah, blah for the rest of your life. And then they changed the rules. And then it's like copays keep getting higher and higher. And then you have, you know, thank God I have military health care as a retiree because it has been a godsend. Because that whole Obamacare thing was just a bad idea from the get-go. For those people that didn't read who didn't read the full thing, you would have found out that you're going to pay more, and that's what we're seeing exactly now, is that your deductibles are going up, you're getting less coverages, less coverage in your medical care, and it's unsustainable. And people that are insured, but they're medically, it's like a medical desert because they can't get the care because they can't afford it because everything has gone up in price, and it was a failed system to begin with. So, but I'm all for free healthcare. It just depends on how you pay for it. But yeah, how can you get 100% of your salary when you don't even work 365 days a year, where you do side deals and you can't even do the basic job responsibilities that you're hired to do, and you're getting millions of dollars off of that, and you're abusing the taxpayer system itself to line your own pockets, and you get to do, insider trading deals. There's tons of that on both sides. That should not be a thing. It is insane. They should not be getting 100% retirement from their salary. Yeah. The interest on out of debt, it will soon pass the DoD budget. Yeah. Oh, the interest on our debt will pass the DoD budget. Yeah, it's just to pay the military service members and all our armed forces comes out to like $6 or $7 trillion. So you could imagine on top of that, it's probably, was it 30, probably around 30 trillion or something like that. It's a big ass number, something that, but the fact that the politicians are arguing, one side is saying, oh, they're not voting for a budget, and this side, oh, they're not voting for a budget. But when you look at who's arguing, and well, you need to approve these things, it's kind of like going back to your household budget. It's like, well, I want a new bass boat, and I want to go into debt, and I don't even want the bass boat. I want the money for the bass boat so I can give it to my neighbor. Nobody in their right mind would do that, but that is what our government is doing by giving away taxpayer dollars for frivolous things to other countries. And of course, their NGOs are all deep in the pockets of all that. George says, all that comes with shutting down all unnecessary spending, we can't just stay a nation of consumers. We must produce things. Again, we have the ability. The matter is, do we have the will? And that's a good point. We are indeed a nation of consumers. That is 100% fact. But the problem is that we've hamstrung the United States and businesses, and we've chased them off as under this guise of, well, they haven't paid their fair share of taxes, and under this thing of saying, oh, they need to pay more in taxes. Well, the problem is, let's say you got a medium or large size company. We're talking, thousands and thousands of employees. Yeah, they get tax breaks. But then they're employing, let's say 5 or 10,000 people, or 2,000 people. Those people are paying property taxes. They're paying taxes. They're paying, they're buying food, sales tax, and all these things. So they are, again, they're making money and they're spending it. They're being the consumers that they are. But now you're saying to the company that, no, now you need to pay more taxes. And so now they can't be as profitable. So they go to other countries to run their businesses. And then now we have a bunch of people that don't have jobs and can't take advantage of that. And so with American companies that things were made in the USA, they just can't float it like they used to. And so a lot of those companies went overseas to take advantage of the cheaper labor and more specifically, the better tax laws, tax havens and things like that for the businesses overseas. Look at Nike and where they're headquartered and so on and so forth. That'll get you down a deep rabbit hole. That'll piss you off. But yeah, things need to be made in the United States, but it needs to be in an atmosphere that is conducive for businesses to say, well, what do I get out of doing this? They got to have they got to get something for it. They're just not going to do it for altruistic reasons of, oh, I'm just going to do it. No, they need to get paid too. So if you lower the tax, I don't care if businesses don't pay any tax, because you're supplying jobs and those people underneath, the employees, are paying taxes. See what I mean? It doesn't, and then the whole thing about paying taxes is just crazy. Yeah, George says we shot ourselves in the foot. Yeah, we have. And we still see this today. As an independent, I'm amazed that there are states that are like, championing and saying, oh, well, we want to offer this, 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 and this for free for our citizens of our state or city or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can get that. How are you going to pay for it? Oh, we're going to tax the highest income people in our state, city or province, whatever it is. And it's like, you realize that this has been done before, and there comes a time of where the rich people are going to say, I'm moving. And they leave, and then you don't have the tax revenue. And so now you can't. You see what I'm saying? There's just other ways to do this, but we don't see that. And again, a lot of people are like on the left are saying, oh, the government should supply all these things, goods and services, subsidies, so on and so forth, which, I mean, there's a place for that, but who pays? That's the thing. And if you raise the taxes so high that your top producers and your top citizens within your state, county, city, province, whatever it is, they get to a level where it's like, yeah, this is way too much tax. I'm out. See ya. I'm going to a state that has more favorable tax, and so I'm going to take my entire business, hundreds or thousands of people, and we're going to move to an entirely different state, kind of like some people left California and went to Texas to take advantage, or Florida or whatever. And again, this isn't a right versus left thing. This is just a common sense budget thing. It's like, why would you continue to live in a state that taxes the crap out of you, that is reducing your bottom line, which is reducing the amount of money that you can pay the people, but yet the state is going to mandate that you pay this amount of money to your employees, and so now you have to eat that. That digs into your profits as well. And some people are like, yeah, this isn't sustainable. We're out. We're going to move to another state that has better tax laws so that we can make money, we can pay our employees more, and we're not hamstrung. And that's exactly what's happening in California. That's why you had that mass exodus, and it still continues to this day. Businesses that are closing up and leaving because everything is getting taxed out the wazoo. And again, it just kind of, we see it at a huge federal government level. Let's just tax and tax and tax, and we're going to abuse the system. There's other ways that you can skin the cat. I don't know. It just, Terry says, we don't manufacture much here anymore. The companies build parts overseas, and we do, and then all we do here is assemble it. The company I used to work for built the assemblies in China and Taiwan. Yeah, yep. George says, you'll get more out of a lot of people paying a little than a few paying a lot. Yeah. And here's the other thing. There was the fair tax. I don't like taxes anyway, but there's a fair tax, and we'll talk about that. Terry says, then ship them from here to build the finished product. Yeah. And the cost of labor comes into play because everything's cheaper. And that makes good business sense. I mean, a lot of companies are like, hey, if I can't make it in the United States and I can't make it as a business, I'm going to look for avenues in which I can get lower cost goods and services to make said product and still offer that and make money. So it happens on a national level. It happens on a personal level. If you have a personal business, it's all about the profit and loss and ways to maximize your profit and minimize the losses that you have. And unfortunately, we come to a place where the U.S. used to be a huge manufacturing country, and but now we're not. And I think something has to be said that maybe there's a little corruption involved from the politicians. I don't know, just throwing it out there. But yeah, it ends up, like George says, a few people cannot run everything. They can't pay for everything. And this whole thing, with the say, well, we need to tax all the billionaires. And you've seen the videos. And if you haven't, you'll see interviews of people that are more left-leaning saying, oh, we just need to tax the billionaires 50% or 75 or 90%. I saw one that said 90%. Well, the fact is, if you took all the billionaires in the United States and you took all of their money, you didn't leave them anything. You just taxed 100%. you couldn't even run the government for like a year. So it's unsustainable to say that you're going to tax the billionaires because billionaires are evil, and that's not going to float the government. That's not going to float anything for any sustainable period. So get off that stupidity. It's just not going to work. And again, if it ends up, worst comes to worst, if I'm a billionaire, I'm probably a billionaire because majority of billionaires are people that have businesses and employ hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, in the United States and around the world. They're billionaires for a reason. They provide jobs and they do business and they make money and the people down. Yeah, some of them don't pay as much as they probably should. Don't get me started on CEOs who make multi-million-dollar pensions and packages and salaries when their workers are getting next to nothing. Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. And that's another thing I like about some foreign countries is that their CEOs and stuff like that, they don't get those overly bloated paychecks like the ones in the United States do. But that's a whole nother video. But where were we talking? Yeah, I lost my train of thought. But it needs to make sense. And if it can make sense within your personal budget at home, you just expand that out, it would make sense in a business, and then it would make sense on a national level. But when you go against common sense and you go against reality and facts and basic math, of a budget, yeah, people are going to look for other ways in which to, help balance that budget and help make profit. And, worst case scenario, let's say you do tax. Let's say, oh, the billionaires are evil. Oh, they're all evil. Okay, whatever. They're all evil, but they all provide jobs. And if you tax them, they pay the majority of taxes anyway. But there's a reason that they get tax breaks, and it's because they provide jobs and those taxes go. It's a whole thing. So, but eventually, it can get to a point of where you're going to tax the crap out of them, and they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to be a citizen of another country that has better tax laws. And so you're going to lose those elite evil billionaires and millionaires, and they're going to go to some other country and live and be a citizen to where their money is appreciated, and they're not going to get abused by the government and the tax system, which is run by a bunch of wolves, and corrupt individuals that abuse the tax money to begin with, and they don't give you what they said that they were going to give you during their time that they're trying to get elected. Seriously. Terry says, the company I work for bought lithium batteries from Samsung and LG. Nobody builds lithium batteries over here. The plant in Georgia is still shut down because they don't have the Korean workers. Yeah. And I know about that because I live here in Korea, and that was big news. But we did see recently on Korean news that they are revamping the visas and stuff like that, so those Korean workers can come back and continue what they're doing. So, yeah. But again, it's that whole visa thing that should have been upgraded. But no, we're going to focus on stuff that's monumentally stupid instead of keeping our visa system up to date and make it more fast and efficient and so on and so forth. If you do a big business deal like Korea is supposed to do with the United States and building lithium battery companies so that, they don't have to pay tariffs, it makes profit for them. U.S. gets, they get good products, services, jobs, all that stuff comes to the United States. But if you don't, have any change or update in the visa system, that can we saw how that monumentally failed, And so, again, we're concentrating on stuff that's not important when we should be concentrating on the stuff that is important. You make a huge multi-million or billion-dollar deals, you need to make sure that those deals can be done. So, again, the current administration, they should have looked at this and said, hey, we need to do this, make sure visas and so on and so forth. And, yeah, it could have been averted. But again, our system is so bloated. It's just like a severely, it's like 1,000-pound person that is morbidly obese, and it's just like you don't know where to. There's so many different problems, and there's so much. It's just, oh my gosh, where do we start? It's kind of daunting. 8,000 people waiting on the job because of that crazy Karen. That's true. And technically, she was right. But again, that never should have happened to begin with, because the government, if you made a deal and said, hey, you can come over here, you can build this company and provide good services, whatever, blah, 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 you should have been also saying, hey, you're going to need what, people? Okay, you're going to need a visa. Okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to give you special visas. It's quick and easy to do. They've done it in the past. They just didn't do it. So, yeah, nobody's perfect. But that should have been done prior. So this wouldn't happen. So Crazy Karen didn't get her knickers in a bunch, and now 8,000 people are waiting for jobs. But politicians will do all this other stuff, except for the stuff that they're actually hired to do. George says the whole system is a dumpster fire and has been for years. I know, because we've let the foxes into the hen house. And we've allowed NGOs, we've allowed insider trading, we've allowed this outdated, antiquated system of politicians get pensions for life and they get a different healthcare system than normal people. There's no way you can get the healthcare plan that politicians get. It's impossible. So, that should have been done away with a long time ago. But yeah, exactly, George. I mean, the whole system has... it needs updating. It needs an firmware upgrade. And you need to get rid of the dead weight. But yeah, that's it. So I think we fixed the problems of the world. Thanks to you and your recommendations, all that stuff. It just, boom, done deal. So if any of us are king for a day or whatever, king for a day. Don't get me started on that. It just, the whole, and again, the focus on, the right to protest, I'm totally for that. I'm totally for your right to protest and address grievances and so on and so forth. It's a right as an American citizen. But the funny thing is that let's focus over here and we'll ignore all the corruption and stuff over here. The things that you were hired to do, we're not going to concentrate on that, on how you didn't do those things and how you're lining your pocket. We want you to focus on protesting this, and it's just, oh man, crazy. Terry says, midterms are next year. Forget the budget. I need to go get some photo ops. Yep, yeah. Got to hold the babies, kiss the babies, pet the dogs. Everybody's going to have a dog, to make them more relatable. And yet many of these politicians that have been in government for decades can't even tell you what the cost of milk is, and they have multiple mansions, and yet they're talking about income equality. The elites telling you how you need to be equal in income, and their income far exceeds yours through unethical means. Legal means, but it's unethical, and those things should have been cut out a long time ago. So, because you wouldn't allow that in your own home business. And if you hired employees, you wouldn't allow your employees to do what Congress and those corrupt politicians are doing. So, just saying, just a little bit of common sense goes a long way. Okay. Anyway, George says it would be a sign. If I would sign an edict to make it so it could never happen again and then immediately renounce the throne. Yeah. Yep. I agree. I'm right there with you. But every country has their corruption. I live in Korea, retired early, left the United States. I'm still an American citizen, but to let you know, there's corruption here. There's corruption in Thailand. There's corruption in Japan. There's corruption in, all the countries there is corruption. But unfortunately, the United States has made it like a competition to see how crooked and corrupt we can abuse our people in the tax system to line our own pockets. I mean, you got to admit, the United States, they're in the top 5. That's all I'm saying. So, it is not worth the trouble. Yeah. But anyway, I'm starving. I'm starting to get hangry, and then I would say things that I would regret. So Now that we've fixed the world problems in our budget and the shutdown government, all of that would be fixed if they just listened to what we said. Social Security would be fixed. No property tax, no tax on Social Security. We would phase that out, and all of that. And we would have a budget. So we already fixed all that stuff. So everybody else just needs to get on board with that. But they won't. They won't. Hopefully they will. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go because I'm starving. I'm hungry and my stomach is kind of knotted up, and it's kind of get that nauseated feeling when you're hungry, and you're getting hangry. That's where I'm at right now. So anyway, and when I'm hangry, I do massively stupid stuff. So I don't want to do that. My wife doesn't deserve that. So we're going to go ahead and we'll leave this. With that said, I know obligatory, outro email. If you want to email me, tell me what you're doing, say hi. I always answer my emails, so there's that. These bunch of people bought me coffee, which is cool. If you want to do that, link in the description box. But wait, the very best thing that you could do is just like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask. Don't worry about the coffee. Just like the video, subscribe, pass this on to somebody else. And I enjoy the conversations that we have. So I enjoy it. Alrighty, like Terry says, have a good day. And everybody else that participated and watched, thank you. Heart goes out to you. Good feelings, vibes, joy, common sense, all going your way. And we'll see you on the next video. Peace.